Welcome back. As we've been discussing this morning, we're now in the second week of a government shutdown, and there's still no end in sight. Americans are starting to feel the effects. In a small town near West Point, a group of women are working together to keep their community fed during this shutdown. Our MSNBC investigative correspondent Mark Santia shows us how they're doing just that.
Welcome to Highland Falls, New York. This village of 3,000 people sits just outside the main gate of West Point. It's the oldest military academy in the country, but even West Point isn't safe from the impacts of this government shutdown.
With paychecks frozen, knowing the need was real, a resident had an idea. And that idea became a mission launched by a local group of women.
Or these guys, whichever you want to do.
For Erin Helly, an Army veteran, military spouse, and volunteer at the food drive, this effort hits very close to home.
Our community is struggling right now. We're in this time of uncertainty. People really don't know what the future holds.
That is a big concern. West Point is the largest employer in this community.
If this continues, it's going to be catastrophic.
Tierney Kane is a government employee volunteering her time to help friends and coworkers facing financial and food insecurities.
A majority of the people that I work with are not getting paychecks right now, and food is expensive.
With donations pouring in from food banks to businesses to residents, including baby food and even pet supplies.
We have our furry friends that we're taking care of also.
Jennifer Gargiulo had the original idea.
It started out as looking at Facebook and seeing people's upset about the federal shutdown, how they were going to feed their families.
And Jennifer says this effort will continue as long as the shutdown continues, stressing, got it, from donation deliveries to here inside the Senior Center of Highland Falls, there's no politics, only people.
This is awesome. It's humbling to be lending service to people who serve us 365, 24/7. To be able to give that back is really humbling.
In Highland Falls, New York, Mark Santia, way too early.
Thanks to Mark for bringing us that important reporting. It sets us up nicely for congressional reporter for Semafor, Eleanor Mueller. First of all, always leave it to women to see a need, identify it, and organize around how to fix the problem. But this isn't really a problem that they should be having to fix. Food banks are already stressed. My reporting on them over the years has shown that they've not really rebounded from the demand during the pandemic. So to now see this community having to organize on behalf of their neighbors who don't know when their next paycheck is coming, is this percolating in the minds of lawmakers? Because you and I talk to them all the time, and it feels like the politics is winning out over the personal right now.
It certainly does. And we've heard from members on both sides of the aisle that this military pay is a big issue for them. Of course, Trump administration officials have since said that they will find ways to make sure that members of the military and their families receive paychecks or even during a government shutdown. But that brings its own kind of uncertainty, because then we're removing this massive pain point for lawmakers to feel like they have to come to a deal. Now that's not on the table.
I think you bring up a really good point here, right? Because I had been looking at October 15th at a day where the political price gets steeper to pay, and that maybe it would pressure both parties to the table to say, OK, we've postured enough. Let's get something done. I think you're right that it takes that pain point away. Thankfully, but also not thankfully, right? I mean, it's that careful balancing act where these troops, of course, deserve to get paid, but then also all of the furloughed government workers that are also not getting paid right now are still very much feeling that crunch. So do you get any sense, as the Senate comes back to town today, that anything has changed?
Unequivocally, no. You know, this is the 8th time the Senate's going to vote on this Republican spending bill. They've changed tax slightly in that they're saying they're no longer going to allow votes on the Democratic counter proposal, which they'd been doing as basically a courtesy to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. But beyond that, everything is the same as it was when the shutdown first started weeks ago, which is Democrats want concessions on health care, specifically these Affordable Care Act subsidies. Republicans say this is a simple bill, a simple extension. It buys us time. We're not even going to engage.
I think the thing that feels like it has shifted from my reporting is looking at how last week it felt like the conversation was around not if to negotiate on healthcare subsidies, but when. The speaker was saying, okay, the government has to reopen first. Thune was backing him up on that. And then at the end of last week, the speaker was saying sort of like, clear the decks. That's not actually what we're talking about here. We are simply talking about reopening the government. How does that shift the contours of this? Because it felt like we were nearing the potential for something, and now it feels like we're far from that.
It does. I mean, it just reinforces this sensation that they're talking completely past each other. You know, they're not even in a room together to begin with, but not only that, but they're having entirely different conversations at these press conferences that they're holding day after day. And I think it's going to take, you know, some third party factor, whether that's Trump engaging when he gets back from the Middle East, whether that's, you know, Thanksgiving travel and the types of mishaps we're already seeing at airports, something to move lawmakers here, because it's not going to be this military pay issue.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And when you hear the speaker coming out of the weekend, setting the tone for the week, where he's saying this could be, and this could put us on pace for the longest shutdown ever. The longest was 35 days. I mean, they're about to, once they hit Thursday, Friday of this week, already surpass the 17-day mark, which is the fourth longest shutdown. Does that seem to move the metric at all for lawmakers? I mean, I'm just sort of at a loss here for what ultimately shakes this loose, and I think you are too.
I think we're all at a loss. You know, the fact that the House has not been in session since this started, there are fewer members on the Hill. It feels very quiet, and unlike that, 30-plus day shutdown, this is a total government shutdown. You know, with that shutdown, parts of the government were funded. Right now, no parts of the government are funded, and the longer this goes on, the bigger those macroeconomic effects are going to be, and the fewer of them are going to be able to regain. You know, there was a huge hit to GDP in that month-plus shutdown. It was never made back. I think we're certainly nearing territory now where that's going to be what we're looking at.
We've been talking to our CNBC reporters every morning about how market volatility at this point is sort of baked in from Wall Street. At the same time, when you see multi-week long or maybe potentially month-long government shutdowns, it's just not how the system is supposed to work, and you can't bake in that level of volatility. So we'll keep tracking the economic impact, of course, the personal impact, stories like the one that Mark Santia brought us this morning. But as you and I go back to the Hill today, I do remain a little bit vexed and very pessimistic on where this ends up going. I would love for lawmakers to be able to change my mind. For now, Eleanor Mueller of Semafor, thank you, as always.